What causes an eclipse of the moon?
An eclipse is actually nothing more than a shadow projected onto the moon's surface. As the Earth orbits around the sun, the sunlight is cast onto the Earth as well as the moon. This causes the Earth and moon to both have shadows. This is no different than any object that is outside on a sunny day. And a lunar eclipse is what we see when the moon's orbit places the moon directly in the Earth's shadow.
Lunar eclipses can be seen by anybody on Earth who has a clear view of the moon during the period of eclipse. Why don't we get lunar eclipses every time that the moon is full?
This has to do with the Earth's orbit of the sun along the ecliptic. Because the moon doesn't orbit the Earth on the ecliptic, the only time that we can have a lunar eclipse is when the moon passes through or within 0.5 degrees of the ecliptic in its orbit. Another factor that plays into this is the moon's phase. To get a total lunar eclipse, the moon has to be full. The only time that an eclipse happens is in the so-called eclipse seasons.
We can and have predicted lunar eclipses for thousands of years. There are many objects and events that have taken place throughout the history of the world that relate to lunar eclipses, such as Stonehenge, Peloponnesian War, Aristotle's view of the Earth, and actually saved the life of Christopher Columbus and his crew. How do all of these relate to lunar eclipses? Well, first off, Stonehenge in England has just recently been related to what is believed to be a very accurate process by which the people of Stonehenge predicted lunar eclipses. How did they use this megalith in the process of predicting lunar eclipses? What is thought is that these people used 19 horseshoe-shaped upright columns in the center of the monument to place a rock or marker on. They are believed to have started at one end of the horseshoe, and for every full moon they would have this rock or marker to the next adjacent column. By moving this rock after every lunar month, they realized that after 47 moves the rock would lie on the 10th column. This would tell the people of Stonehenge that the full moon that rose that month would pass through the Earth's shadow during the night and complete a total lunar eclipse. In the second phase of the Peloponnesian War in 413 BC, just before the departure signal was given for the Athenians to retreat from the city of Syracuse, there was a lunar eclipse, which they took as a bad omen. Because of this, their departure was delayed, allowing the Syracusans to successfully overthrow the Athenians, which many believe to be one of the major contributors to the fall of Greek civilization. In 350 AD, Aristotle used lunar eclipses to prove that the Earth was not flat, but rather spherical. He argued that the Earth had to be round because the shadow falling on the face of the moon was always in a circle, and the only object whose shadow always looks like a circle from any angle is a sphere. One of the most famous examples is the trick pulled by Christopher Columbus. On his fourth and final voyage to the New World, Columbus and his crew were forced to beach their ship on St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica, on June 25, 1503, due to an epidemic of shipworms that were eating away at the ship. At first, the natives were very hospitable to Columbus and his crew, offering them food and shelter. However, after being stranded for about 6 months, some members of his crew mutinied, stole from, and murdered a number of the natives. It was after this event that the natives cut off all of their food supply. Columbus knew that he and his crew could not survive until rescue came, so using an almanac written by a German astronomer, he devised a clever plan to trick the natives into once again sharing their food with him and his crew. This almanac was something no sailor traveled without because it provided detailed information about the sun, moon, and planets, along with the stars and constellations by which to travel by. In this almanac was the key to Columbus's survival. It contained astronomical tables from 1475 to 1506, and by studying these tables he discovered that on the 29th of February 1504 that a total eclipse of the moon would take place. On February 26, 3 days before the eclipse was to take place, Columbus met with the natives' chief and announced that his Christian God was angry with his people for no longer supplying he and his crew with food, and that God would send them a sign to prove his anger. 3 nights hence, he would all but obliterate the rising full moon, making it appear inflamed with wrath, which would signify the evils that would soon be inflicted upon all of them. Just as he had predicted, a lunar eclipse occurred 3 nights later, and just as he had told them, the moon looked inflamed and had a bloody appearance. Terrified, the natives pleaded with Columbus to restore the moon, and in return they would once again supply his crew with food and shelter. Telling the natives that he had to confer with God, he retreated back to his cabin. Knowing full well how long the eclipse was to last because of his almanac, he sat in his cabin for about 50 minutes, turning a sand glass every half hour to time the stages of the eclipse. Just before the moon was to reappear, Columbus came out announcing to the natives that his God forgave them and that the moon would soon emerge. It was at this moment that the moon began to reappear as it emerged from the Earth's shadow. The natives kept their promise. However, it was because of Columbus's ingenious plan and his trusty almanac that he and his crew survived until help finally arrived on June 29, 1504.